Welcome to the Sports Card Lessons Podcast. I'm your host, Big Ken. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on a streaming service, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. You'll be notified whenever I drop any new content. Welcome. Thanks for being here. I hope everyone had a great weekend. Here it is, Sunday afternoon. The Masters is on. I'm in contention in that bracket that I filled out last week that I talked about. So I'm excited for that. So I'm watching that kind of closely. I was able to set up Saturday at the 413 Card Show in Chicopee, Mass. And shout out to Bill and Billy Sports Cards for hooking me up with the table there. And I finished off the weekend with walking a show at the Orange, Connecticut show here in Connecticut, a local show. Going to break down the Saturday card show first. I was really surprised how well that 413 card show was put together and run. Initially, for whatever reason, I thought this was a much smaller show, like 30, 40 tables, a local show, and never really gave it much thought as far as going to set up as a dealer. I know the first time they ran this, there was a snowstorm. I think it was in February. It was either January or February. And I had planned on going to walk the show. And with the storm, I never did. So when this came back up again, I really wasn't putting much thought into reserving a table. I figured I would go walk the show and, know the show, get to know the show if it would be a show for me. That I'd want to go set up at. So I really didn't put a lot of thought into it. And then the show was coming up, and I reached out to Bill about the show, and he said we might have an extra table. So I looked it up, and I saw that it was 110 tables. I'm like, wow, this is a pretty big show. It's not, it's not what I thought it was, but it worked out. Somebody had an extra table. He hooked me up, and I took it, and I went up there, got up there Saturday morning to set up. I thought the show was a great venue, really big room. Like I said, 110 tables. From what I heard, a lot of people said it was well advertised, which is important, which is a good draw for people to come in. There was lots of traffic. And you know what? For me, the hardest thing about setting up at these one-day shows is these shows go late. They go to like 4 or 5 o'clock. And I understand it. The promoters want you to stay. They want you to stay there till the end of the show. Nobody wants, to see people, packing up and leaving early. But this show ended at 2 o'clock, which to me is enough time to pack up, get home at a reasonable hour, and be able to make some plans for a Saturday night, right? And unless there's like people autographing or things like that at these shows that they push till 3 or 4 o'clock, unless something is going on to bring people in that late, most people are pretty much done at the show by morning, early afternoon. You do get people show up late trying to make some, last minute deals. But I think the later in the day, the last hour or two of a show that goes late like that is dealers going and shopping at other dealer tables, right? Just going, we all did it. We all walked around in the morning, and then we all make purchases throughout the day. And then we all go back out and see what everybody bought up and see if there's something else, something that we could get while we're out there. The only thing I would say about the show, the only negative I'd have about the show was the lighting. And I know I said the same thing about the Mount Kisco show a few weeks or a month ago or so. And I think they had the same exact lights. I mean, you got in there, set up, and all of a sudden I looked up and I could see those yellow lights and just knew that it was going to be difficult throughout the day. It's not difficult to see, but when you get the close up, when you want to look at a card and those yellowing lights, it's very hard. I spent a lot of time pulling out the phone, using the flashlight, using the camera to blow things up just to get better looks at cards and things like that. people walking the show said the same thing. They're like, wow, everything's great except for this lighting. And I know that's not an easy fix anywhere. It's just not an easy fix. So if you find a place and it's got those lights, I mean, you're stuck with it, right? Everything else is usually one negative thing about most of these places, whether it's parking or lighting or something else. But I mean, I guess with this, everything else in that venue worked out. So I'm sure they're going to have it back there again. Some of the people, which I know, they probably know the show or were at the last show, they have these little lighting things set up, shining lights into their showcases. I said, here's some people who were expecting this, right? That they knew of this issue before today. So if I was to go back and do it, I would probably do the same thing, figure out some kind of light to shine in the case, because I think it made a big difference. Because when I went and walked up to look in their cases, I was like, wow, this really looks good, having these lights in here. In a normal room, in a well-lit room, it wouldn't have made any difference at all. But when you're in a room and you're struggling to see into cases, and then all of a sudden you go up and you got these nice LED lights shining inside a case, it definitely made a big difference. Interesting when you go to shows and you can tell dealers that have been doing this for a while, pretty comfortable in what they're doing, versus some people that are just starting out. They're new to it. They're jumping in. They're trying to figure it out. And I want to say the biggest thing that you can point out is the conversations and how different it is when it just comes to communicating. And I think being a dealer and doing this, 2-3 weekends a month or even once a month, and just being involved all the time, I think your communication gets to be so good at these shows that you're able to, as a dealer, tell the person on the other side of the table who's interested in something, just completely communicate out, because you don't want to waste you don't want to waste your time, their time, and you want it to be a good experience, right? If nothing else, you say, hey, this guy was straight up. He said he's high on this card, or, he is willing to work out a deal there, or, make an offer on my disc, whatever. It was just that communication. Like people they know where they stand when they come to your table. And then people who don't do this a lot, I find that they throw things out there that maybe they really don't mean, but they're trying to reel you in to make a deal. I had an instance at this show. I saw a card early in the day that I wanted to buy, and I looked up the comp. I was prepared to pay. I mean, the last 3 comps were like, 390, 395, 401. I was prepared just to pay comps on that card. And a little bit later in the day, it got a little slow. So I went over and I looked at the card. I said, what are you looking to get on this card? We talked for a few minutes. I threw him out a price, which was paying strong. It was right at comps. He's like, yeah, I'll take that. And he said, look, I have other cards there. If you want to buy a few more cards, he said, I can give you a deal. Oh, perfect. So I went through his cards. I pulled out 5 football cards, pulled all the last sales, whatever the last sale was on the card. Now, there's not a lot. I mean, a lot of football cards, but not a lot. Like when you're pulling up cards, there's usually like, in the last week, there'll be 3 or 4 sales, right? And they're all kind of bunched in. I'm not pulling a lowball sale. And in fact, on these cards, I just went to the last sale, whatever it was, whatever the last sale was. And 4 out of the 5 were at were the highest sale of the 3 last sales. So I was being very fair on that. I figured out what 85% was. I figured out what 90% was. And I tried to land right in the middle, kind of rounding it out just as a starting point, right? So the cards total were 1645. So 85% is about 1398, right? Even that out to 1400. and 90% is 1480. So I'm okay because these are cards. All these are cards that I know that have the ability to go up, that I don't think I would lose out in, but I would like to at least have 10%, that 10% in there. And you hear people, all these people that you're talking about the shows, everything's 80%, 80%, 80%. So I'm paying strong, right? I'm pushing 90% because I just want to get the deal done. I'd like to make it smooth. I'm away from my table. I have to watch what's going on at my table, right? Now I'm putting in 20 minutes over there, figuring this stuff out. He's working with somebody else while I'm doing this and going through. So I said, look, I'm just going to start at 1425. I'm sure he's going to come back. But if we could be around the 1450, area there, I would be happy. If we need to go to like 1470, 75, like I guess I could put up with that. Right. But that's where I would have been happy is that. And again, I feel I'm paying very strong. He looked at me, I said, he was done. And I said, all these cards, I said, could we do 1425 on it? And he looked at me like I was way off and said, what percent? What is that, like 60%? I said, no, it's 60%. I said, no. I said, I pulled all these prices up on all these cards here. This one and this one, this one. I said, just look, I could just look them right up. I'm just looking them up, the last 3 eBay sales. So he sat there for a few minutes. He's going through his phone. He's looking at this, looking at that. And I could see he's got the calculator out. And he says, yeah, I'm at about 1,800. I said, 1,800? I said, is that before or after the discount for buying multiple cards? He said, after. I said, really? I said, are you serious? So I said, what prices are you putting on these cards? I just went through all eBay sales, picked the highest sale on there, so we didn't have to stand here and go back and forth. And what we were going to figure out was the comp on the card, versus a 620 to a 599 or a 605. I just took the 620 and rolled with it, right? Just because I'm trying to get this done as quickly as I can, again, so I can just get back to my table and not have to put any more time in here. He said, no. He said, these are football cards. I can't sell them at comps. These prices are going to be selling way up come June or July. I was buying a card at comps. I was buying this card at comps, and you offered me a deal, said, buy some more. I'll give you a discount. I said, this is April. This is not June or July. I can't base a sale buying a card today that you think it's going to sell for 3 months from now. I said, I don't even understand why you stopped me and had me go through these cards if you were not even going to give me a deal and you wanted 125% of comps. So I thought to myself, where was the communication breakdown? I mean, I put 25 minutes on this. I still ended up buying the one card that we agreed about at the beginning of the price. And I would have walked away, but he's offering me a better deal if I buy more. And now I'm trying to spend my money. And now we've gone from 100% comps to 125 or 130. And I know I'm a strong buyer. If I believe in a card and I truly believe the price is going to go up in the next few months, I'll buy that card at comps today, but I'm not going to buy that card at a June, July, June, and it's speculation, right? We have no idea. We have no idea where that price is going to be, and I'm taking the risk here. And people are thinking, like, people are saying, "Oh, you talk about this on your podcast, and it's a wonder anybody ever gives you a deal." And I'm like, "But look, I'm still taking a risk." I was buying Joe Burrow, and he got hurt. He was out for the whole season. I can't sell those cards now. I got to put them on the shelf, right? So that's money. That's money that's invested that I'm holding on to. Nobody knows where CJ Stroud is going to be in June, or Anthony Richardson is going to be in June, or Will Levis is going to be, all the rage or replaced by somebody else, right? I mean, nobody knows. I'm taking the risk here. So you can't sell me the cards at a price that you think it's going to be a few months from now. I can't buy it at that price. I'll buy it at today's price, and I'll take the risk that it goes up. It could go down. It could stay the same. I don't know where it's going, but that's the risk. So when you're coming to me to telling me you want to sell me a card at June prices in April, it's not going to happen. And I don't know anybody else out there that's going to do that or even accept that. These are cards you're going to have to sit on now, and you're going to have to take the risk and wait till June or July to see if it worked out or not. And it's possible, right? It's possible that some dealers could spend every show doing that, having these conversations with people, walking the show. But from one dealer to the other, we're all wearing the lanyards. We all paid for the table. And when you say to me and you make an offer that you're going to give me a discount, and then you come back later, there's just terrible communication there. And I made a note here, right? The only time that I'll pay more on a card, right, if it's going in my PC. And I talked about that before. I've overpaid on cards because I just wanted the card. And some of the cards that I want don't come up a lot. And I'm happy to pay over a comp on it just to get a card, just to have a card and say, okay, I've got that card now. One less card I have to worry about. It's in my PC. It's not going anywhere, right? It's not. So it doesn't matter if I paid $100 or $150. It was something I purchased for myself, right? It's a gift to me for my PC, and it can sit up there. And I don't care if I've overpaid for it or not. If it's something I want, I'll do that. As you can imagine, and if you've been out to any shows lately, the CJ Stroud, the Anthony Richardson, these cards are way overpriced. I say overpriced. There's a comp on these cards, but the cards that are in the cases are much higher, and the prices that people are walking who are selling these cards are coming to the table what they want from are much higher than what the current comps are. I understand and I appreciate, the people who are selling these cards at comps, because I'm the guy that's trying to buy certain players at comps. But now that's really becoming far and few between, being able to buy these cards at comps. I mean, even buy these cards at comps right now. I talked about having a few deals set up going into this weekend that would have taken place at the show on Saturday. On Friday night, I get a message, and another one Saturday morning from two different people saying, you know what, I decided I'm just going to hold that card instead. Two were CJ Stroud silver PSA 10, and one was an Anthony Richardson silver PSA 10. And the two Stroud people were just like, yeah, I'm going to hold it. In other words, we negotiated a deal. There were cards that they were coming back from PSA. I offered them comp prices on the cards, and they accepted, but then they figured it wasn't in their best interest to sell me that card at comps, and in their best interest now to hold the card. So two deals fell apart right away. The third deal was somebody that was at that show and said he was going to put the show in his case for more than what the comp was on it. And said, look, if I don't sell it at the show, it's yours at the end of the show for the comp price. And I have to say, yes, they're all listeners of the podcast. So you know who we are out there. But yes, they all know my hobby plan too. And I probably hurt myself by being as truthful as I am here on the podcast, but it's still a risk. And I just mentioned that it's not a sure thing. It's not like, you're putting the money in a CD, and a year from now, you're going to have, 12 months or 13 months from now, your $1,000 is going to be $1,500 or $1,250, right? There's no guarantee here for that. So there's risk in this. This here is like me buying a stock, right? Buying this card and hoping that 3 or 4 months from now it's going to improve in price and I can sell it at a profit. It could all backfire. I could take huge losses come June or July, right? Nobody knows what's going to happen between now and then. So even though I've got a great plan and it's worked out the last couple of years, do I hurt myself telling people? Maybe I do. Maybe I do, but there's still risk involved. I'm willing to take that risk. And people who are, again, who are just getting these cards back from PSA, right? They're the ones that are getting the most profit on that card right now. It could turn out that somebody could profit more on that card than them, but if you're sending a card out for grading and it's coming, $15 to grade it, I don't know what it cost you to, out of the box you pulled it out of, or a break you got into, whatever that cost was. But then you're sending it out, it's coming back, it's a $400 or $500 card, or in a straight Stroud, it's $900. That's good profit. That's a very good profit on that card. I don't know how much more profit there's going to be, where if you could get 900 for that card now, is it going to be 1,000? Is it going to be 1,100? It's going to be, nobody knows. Nobody knows. But I mean, you're guaranteed now probably an $800 profit on that card. That's more than anybody. That's more than I'm going to get if I buy that card from you. Right. On my back end, where's it going to be? It's not going to be anywhere near the $800, the profit that you're going to pick out at the beginning. So, as good as I thought the show was on Saturday, and I will definitely go back and set up again the next show, I say to myself, it was probably a good thing I didn't record on the way home, because I just felt frustrated on the way home. I was spending time on deals that never happened, both before the show and just at the show. Not selling cards that I'm motivated to sell, and getting just unbelievable lowball offers on the cards that I'm trying to sell, and struggling to buy cards at the current comps. I had an episode, a number of weeks ago, and I called it the hobby dead zone. And I just kind of feel like it's just a funny time in the hobby right now, for all the things I just listed. Going to a card show, I should be able to accomplish these things. There's enough people. It's not like I'm showing up and there's only 4 or 5 people at the show. There's enough people at the show, and with enough of these same cards at the show, I should be able to I should be able to get these cards at, be able to buy them strong at comps, right? I should be able to sell cards that I have for sale if I'm, willing to, go to 80 or 85%, or just being motivated to sell those cards. I understand every show can't be a great show. And I know leaving and feeling this way will make better shows feel even better, right? Even or much better. But it also makes me look inside, right? Just look at myself. What am I doing? And say, how could I have done this better? What could I have done better today that would have made this show better for me? Right. So these are the things that go through my mind. If I'm going home frustrated, what am I going to do different when I'm at a show like this, or when I'm preparing for a show like this, that I'm going to make it better for me? Because this was a great show. I told you all the reasons up front. Lots of tables, lots of advertising, lots of people coming around the show, lots of cards at the show to be bought. And if I'm frustrated, there must be something more that I can do, right? So I always say to myself is, sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's good to have shows like this, because it makes you look inward and, not get too complacent as a dealer in what you're doing, and say, look, I can do better. I have to do better. Something I could change this up or change that up. My sales were low at this show, but a lot had to do with what I was selling, right? I know I'm not putting cards out there that everybody in the room wants. And the football I did have out there was lower end football, all slabs under like $60 or $50, mostly with football, with a little bit of hockey and a little bit of basketball and some, the college basketball cards and things like that. 100% of my sales came from my singles boxes. And I was really motivated to sell cards out of my case. I priced them correctly to sell, willing to move them at 80, 85%. I put them most of like a couple dollars. Like if a card was selling at $33, I put it in there at like 35 or 40. Like I was, some cards that were at 150 or 155, I put them right at that price, right? I just sell the cards. It's cards I've been carrying back and forth. They're great cards. It's just I need to start freeing up space because pretty soon I'll be wanting to put different things in my cases, right? I was getting, and I know you're going to say, well, if you're motivated, why aren't you accepting the offers? I was just getting low ball. Like a guy came and he wanted to buy six slabs, low end football, right? I had a $40 price on all 6 of them. And most of them were $30 to $33, $35, right? It was what the comp was on last sales on these cards. And he wanted to buy all of them. And I said, you want to buy all of them? I could do them at $25 each, $150, and you're getting them all under comps. He said, yeah, that's fair. Would you do 70? I said, for all of them? No, I can't. Come on, man. I can't do $70 for 6 slabs. Come on. I mean, what kind of offer is that? I mean, here I am. I came right back under comps, right, with a very fair offer. And if he would have said, hey, if you could do 140 or 135, I probably would have accepted it. But 70, come on. That to me, that's frustrating. So are these just cards that people think they're $10 cards, or people, they're just buying them so they can guarantee that if they just take all these cards and ship them off somewhere that they're going to get 20 or 25. Like it makes sense. That's their business to do. Maybe for them, but for me, it's a little frustrating. For me, 2 things that happen to me that annoy me the most or frustrate me the most is, one, when I'm motivated to sell and I'm willing to be at 80, 85%, and the card, I just don't sell the cards, right? That's between me and my cards. Right? That frustration is between me and my cards. The other one is when I'm cash heavy and I can't make any reasonable deals, like any deals that I'm that would make sense to me to buy, and I just can't get the deals done. And I say, hey, I'm willing. I could do this and that. I'm paying cash and whatever. I don't care. This is where I need to be. And I accept, when I say this frustration's between me, me and my cards, I accept 50% of whatever goes wrong. I start at, I'm accepting 50%. Like there's more that I can do to make this a less frustrating or a better experience. Sometimes and I talked about being complacent, sometimes when we're going along doing something and everything's working and we're just showing up, going through the motions, and then all of a sudden we see people around us doing much better. And we're like, wait a minute, why are they doing so much better and I'm not? Well, maybe I haven't been paying attention. Maybe I need to do more out there. Maybe I need to see what everybody else is doing, what's making them successful. And I talk about this all the time, emulating successful people, right? So I've done this my whole life. I find people who are successful, figure out what made them successful in this space, and then try to emulate that or even make it better, right? So I'm usually feeling to myself when things turn out like this that I could have done more and I should have done more. And it's time to figure out what that more could have been to move forward. At this show, I was trying to buy cards, that were coming to my table. Right. And now the raw cards were showing up, and especially the Richardsons were like so off-centered, so off center. Like I complain about the ones that I pulled. I mean, some of these were comically off centered, and some of them either obvious, some dings or scratches or bad. There's just problems with these cards. And I ask everybody when they show up to the table and they hand me cards, if they hand me like if I show them a card, like it's something I may be interested in, or they're handing me a card, uh, what are you looking for? How much you looking for on this card? Because I expect them to show up at a price. And some people would be like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, well, if you don't know, I don't know. I mean, they're your cards and you're selling them. You need to tell me what you want for these cards. And then it gives me somewhere to start. Right. And the people that did know, it was like 125% of comps. And it's hard to start there. Somebody comes with an Anthony Richardson silver prism, way off centered. I don't even think I could 9. I probably 8. I mean, a 9 would be a reach. And I say, hey, what are you looking for on this? 125. 125. As soon as I offer $50 or $60, even if I wanted to take a chance on the card or even try to sell it raw, if I offered that, I mean, I think I would immediately become the jerk. Right? Be like, oh, right, trying to steal my cards, stuff like that. And really, I think some people show up don't understand. Some people that show up at these cards don't understand centering, condition. Stuff that if you've been doing this long enough, you just look at the card and you're like, oh, that's way off centered. Or there's issues with that card. And I don't argue with people at the show. I don't want to create a negative experience. A lot of times when people say, oh, I want to be at 125 or whatever, they're way over comps. I'm like, probably all set. Thanks for sharing. Appreciate you stopping by. I'm not going to argue with you. I've been doing this long enough. I mean, if they handed me that card and said, hey, look, I know it's way off centered. What do you think you could do for it? Then we can talk. Then I could maybe negotiate with them on something like that. But if you're coming in at such a high price, it's hard to be there. There's nothing better when somebody shows up at your table with cards for sale and they've done their homework, especially as a deal. Like I know some dealers are they like people who show up and know nothing about their cards. I'm on the opposite. I like people who show up and have done their homework and they could just rattle off the last couple of sales on it. Give me the comps on a card. They understand how the buying and selling goes at a show and they kind of know right where to start, and I think I speak for most dealers. If you're heading out to a show and you're hoping to sell some cards, make sure you do your homework. Know what the card value is. If you want to sell a card at a show, or you're planning on selling a card, or if you don't want to trade the card, know what the last sales were on the card. And if you're high on the card, like you want to be at 125% and you have a good reason for it, say, hey, look, I'm selling this card, but I'm high on it. This is where I'm at. This is the reason I'm at. And then gives the dealer on the other side, the ability to say yes, no, or, I'm all set, something like that. No one wants to waste time at a show, comping out cards for a deal that's never going to get done. And I've been pretty good at avoiding that. And I got sucked right in this last show. And I said, somebody got me, right? But I usually I'm pretty good about avoiding that. The long thing that I know a deal's never going to get done. I do it, right? If I'm going to a show, I don't want to waste anybody's time, and as a dealer trying to, going to a show and people like most of the time, I don't even show people my cards. Like I don't go to a show to sell my cards. I don't show up at a car and say, hey, are you buying? You want to buy these cards? Right. I usually go out and if there's a trade, I bring my cards. If there's a trade, or if I see something in a case that I like, I say, hey, do you see anything you might be interested in? I kind of like this card, but I try to make it as a pleasant experience as possible. I did get to have some pickups at this show. I had a guy come up to my table. He saw my sign on the table buying football. And I have to say, I haven't had a sign in a long time at a show. I haven't put up signs. Uh, at this show, I decided I'm going to make a sign buying football, pop culture, and women's sports. And it was amazing how much that really helped me out uh, at this show. I had a box of women's soccer singles, right, that I had put out there. And when people saw the sign, they said, "You're buying women's sports. Are you selling any?" I'm like, "Yeah, I have the basketball there. I have the soccer in the box there." And even though I have the signage, I think is pretty good, pretty big on my boxes. People have just missed it. They're like, "Oh, I didn't even see it." And they stopped and they dug back in. So just seeing my sign sitting there mentioning women's sports stopped people to ask and then put them in my boxes and got me some sales that way. Um, but the guy that uh, showed up at the table, um, he saw the sign buying football and he said, "Oh, you're buying football. Are you interested in some Brady rookies?" Why, of course I am. He pulled out two identical 2000 Fleer Skybox, told me what he wanted. I counter offered, made a deal pretty quick. If you're on YouTube, I'll hold them up. They're both in pretty good shape. I haven't really looked them over. It'd be nice if I could grade these, but we'll see when I look them and see if they are gradable cards. But here was a guy that did his homework. He knew what he wanted. And when I counter offered, he said, "I kind of expected that this is the way it's going to go, but I'm happy to sell the cards." He said, "I'm so glad I found somebody buying football." So for whatever reason, he walked around the show and I was in the middle of a room, right? So by the time cards were getting to me, they were mostly picked through cards anyways. But the sign, he said, saw buying football and he pulled these Brady's out. I think these Brady's, anybody in that room would have bought these if they were presented these cards. So I felt lucky that, he made it to my table. Another younger kid who was running back and forth. There was a guy across from me who was selling wax, and he kept buying. I watched him. He kept buying boxes and come back, and the guy'd say, "What'd you get?" "This is what I got." And blah blah blah. So he came back to get another box, and the guy asked him. He said, "Oh, I got these cards." And the guy looked at them, and I could see one of them was a Stroud. I said, so when he turned, I said, "Hey," I said, "You want to sell any of those cards?" And he says, "Oh yeah." He handed me the cards. So I bought this green cracked ice prismatic CJ Stroud. Um, so it's another card that this also looks gradable. I hope it's gradable. I will send that out after I look at it. So you never know, you never know when these little opportunities are going to arise for that. The other two cards I picked up at this show was this one here was the deal I already had done and ended up picking it up at the end of the show because the other dealer did not sell it for a higher amount. It's the Anthony Richardson Silver Prism PSA 10. Bought that card right at comps, and also this one. This was the card that I bought from the guy that wanted to give me a deal on multiples and never happened, whatever. But it's the Green Prism PSA 10 CJ Stroud. My pickups were really the highlight for me, the highlight of the show. That and being home by 3:00 on a Saturday afternoon after the show. I mean, both of those were those were the win-wins. All right. So, and again, when they announce this show, I'll reserve a table. I'll do this show again. I thought it was a very well run show. I mean, even during the show, they had food set up. They were selling all kinds of food. They had a bar set up there that was operational at the time. So I think it was a good time had by most people who ended up at that show. Sunday, I walked the Orange, Connecticut show. It's a small local show. And interesting, I pull into the parking lot and I got there a little late. The show's at 9 to 2. I got there at noon, and there's probably like 6 or 7 people with their SUV backs opened up, right? And the Zion case is open, and people were all like doing deals out in the parking lot. I think there was more deals happening in the parking lot than were happening inside the place. I was looking around saying maybe I know anybody, any of these people, and I jump in and see what people, what they were working on, but I didn't know any of the people. So I headed on into the show. I know most of the dealers, and a lot of them weren't there. The usual dealers, they weren't there. So I imagine that they were off set up somewhere else this weekend. It's a nice show, and it's one of those shows that the regular dealer's not there, but all the tables were still full. So they have enough of a waiting list that when the regulars aren't there, they backfill all these spots there. I had one pickup there. I purchased 2020 Prism, a Ruby Prism, Sabrina Ionesco, and I'll hold that up. That was a nice card, a rookie of a star. I think with these, the NBA draft is Monday night, and these stars coming in, some of these other stars are, are not really being looked at. I think the prices are down, especially her prices. I've been picking up Sabrina Ionesco cards for a while because I just think that I'm looking at the last comps, and people are selling these things way under comps. So I'm happy to go in and get them and just see where they go. Just she's not going anywhere. She was the number 1 pick in 2020, and she's a phenomenal player. And the guy I bought it from, the dealer I bought it from, had more of her cards and other cards that I was interested in that he didn't have at the show. And again, a lot like I do, I don't usually around here, I don't bring women's sports too, because people just aren't interested. I mean, I say bring women's sports. I've been selling obviously the Caitlin Clarks and the Van Lith and these Bowman Chrome U college players, but besides that, I haven't really, like the soccer stuff, women's soccer, I haven't really brought. So this was the first show I brought a box to fill in just to kind of see how it would go when I went to the show on Saturday. So on Sunday at this show, this dealer had a whole bunch of stuff, and he had like 2 or 3 women's cards like this. So I grabbed that one and made arrangements, exchanged information with him to, he's going to send me some pictures and get some more deals done there. Funny story. The Don Russ Women's World Cup Soccer, when that came out, geez, I think that was back in the fall. I bought a case of the blasters and I ripped them open, and I got an Alex Morgan Landmarks. So at that time, like if I would have known now what known then what I know now, over the next few months, I ended up getting 9 of these Trinity Rodman Landmarks. But at that time, I had pulled this Alex Morgan and I posted it in a Facebook group, and a guy I know, he posted Trinity Rodman, and he PCs Alex Morgan, I PC Trinity Rodman. So we traded cards, I shipped mine to him, he shipped his to me. So over the next few months, I end up with a whole ton of Trinity Rodman, these Landmarks, some Sophia Smith, all the other players, but I never pulled an Alex Morgan again. So I'd been looking at prices, lately, thinking maybe I'll just buy one because she's the only Landmark I'm missing out of that set. But I just haven't pulled the trigger on it yet. So Friday afternoon, I was on my way home. I stopped by the local Walmart to see if there was anything new. The shelves were picked clean. There was nothing there. There was this one Don Russ Women's World Cup blaster box just sitting there. It was just calling my name. So I picked the box up. I took it home. I bought it. I took it home. I ripped it open, and lo and behold, ta-da, there was an Alex Morgan Landmark in there. So that was certainly a lucky find. It was a Friday afternoon win. And you never hear me saying that after going to Walmart. ever. So it was nice to have a W come out of there and pull a card that was worth way more than the box I bought. But that's it. That was my weekend. I went in reverse, I think. We went Saturday, Sunday, and back to Friday, but that was the weekend. It's spring out there now. I know it's going to be a little tougher to get people to show up to card shows when with the weather getting nice. So it was nice to see a lot of that traffic on Saturday at that show. And I've got shows coming up. I'm busy, almost every weekend coming up for the next like 4 weekends. I'm going to be setting up at shows. So it's going to be a test to see, what the traffic looks like, what the weather getting nice. And I remember last year, some of the shows, people saying, "Oh, it's because it's so nice out," or the baseball tryouts or baseball games or soccer or whatever else they're playing in this lacrosse, not soccer, lacrosse, whatever else they're playing in the spring. So we'll see what's going to happen over the next month or two before we get into really preparing for the national. That's all I got for you. Well, actually, I should say, I think I have a guest for you on Thursday. My guest who's been sick, feeling much better. We're going to lock it down this week. You're going to get that on Thursday. And next weekend, we will be set up. My guest and I, who's going to be here, we're both going to be set up at the Hofstra show in Long Island next Saturday and Sunday. So if you're there, come look for me. Come say hello. I'll be there both days, set up in my usual booth. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And if you like what you hear, please definitely subscribe. And most importantly, tell a friend and spread the word. And until next time, take care of yourselves and everyone around you.